So today's guest is a World Cup winner. He's someone I've been lucky enough to know since I was young, and I've always enjoyed talking cricket and spin bowling with him. He played for Sussex for 15 years, winning everything you can in the domestic game, and also played for England in both white ball formats as an all-rounder bowling left-arm spin. And in 2010, he was part of the winning England side that won the World T20 in the Caribbean. After finishing his playing career, he's gone on to coaching and being involved with teams such as Sussex, England 19s, New South Wales, and now he's at Kent. He also supports the greatest football team in the world, the mighty West Ham United. So welcome to the Spin Badger podcast, Michael Yardy.
Hello, Josh. How are you doing, mate?
All good. Thanks for coming on. So starting, I guess, with your playing career. I remember, when I was really young, watching you at Sussex. You weren't always a spinner. I remember watching you steam down the hill, bowling your left arm seamers. So what was the process like, kind of changing to become a spinner?
Yeah, I mean, it was really simple. I played in the second team game, and I'd done a load of work in the winter on my technical side of my action. And then we played a few second team games, and we played one day, and I think it was like the 16th over. I come on to bowl, and I went for 38. So I thought this is the time probably to think of giving it a bowling seam. And it was one of those where I didn't want to tell the coach because he put so much work into me, and I was like, oh, I don't want to tell him, but I think he I think he maybe told me. So no, it was a good decision, and it was just I don't know. It was one that, I thought, well, I always liked being involved in the games. I always saw myself as a batsman, and I bowled to keep myself in the game. And I thought I'd give spin bowling a go, and it worked quite nicely. And I kind of picked up the skills pretty quickly, I think. So quicker than I probably expected.
Yeah, I think it's something you see in quite a lot of young cricketers, 12, 13-year-olds will be seamers and then change to spin. I think particularly in left arm spinners, but quite rare to see someone do it when they're already playing professional cricket. Who was the coach? Was it with Peter Moores?
No, I wouldn't say Morsey did a hell of a lot of my spin. It was kind of firstly, I did some work with Keith Greenfield, Mark Robinson and Norman Gifford, who used to be coached a long time before I played at Sussex, but he was always around with it. And those guys helped me and gave me the basics to my action. And then it was and then once I had those kind of fundamental basics and I knew what they were, then it developed from there. And ironically, when I first started bowling spin for the first kind of year, I probably bowled with nice shape and bowled it quite slowly, and then quickly worked out that I needed to find a way of bowling in one-day cricket and got lower and more slingy, and and just you evolve to what you're doing, don't you? It wasn't a huge amount of overs to bowl in 4-day cricket, so I knew there was an opportunity in white ball cricket, so I adapted to that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that being adaptable has been a really big message from everyone I had on so far. It was obviously a really good decision to start bowling spin. You went on to have a lot of success. What do you think your strengths were as a spinner?
Yeah, I think, as I say, I kind of got a reasonable amount of kind of technical information, but very kind of basics. But because I was never, it was all about kind of stopping the batter score, and that was my mindset. And look, there'd be a hell of a lot better spinners than me who would, be able to, talk more about their craft in terms of getting people out and setting people up. But I never had those years, like you're saying, most people, if they change, it's kind of at 13, 14, and then have a lot of years to kind of develop and understand bowling spin and the kind of intricacies and all the, things that go along and getting the overs in, and whether if you're as a professional in the second team or in junior cricket. So I never had that. So I always relied on my kind of that competitive edge, and also being a batsman. So I could always felt I had a good sense of what the batter might try and do. And then I always thought it was my job to kind of counteract that with a way of stopping them scoring. So whether that be changes of pace, using the crease, just little subtleties in that way, rather than thinking, right, okay, I can understand what the batter's doing. I'm going to try and get him out this way. So I don't think I had that kind of mindset. So I think mine was very much about kind of what can I do to stop them scoring. And then with that, I think that can create wicket-taking chances. I don't think necessarily, you need to put a slip in and and put a short leg in a 50 over game to get wickets. And I learned a little bit. It was interesting. I say that because I learned quite a lot from obviously playing with Mushtaq Ahmed, but also Sakla Mushtaq joined us in 2008 at Sussex, and I learned a lot from him in terms of what he did it obviously in a different way. He would put a slip in, he would put a short leg, and he would create that kind of theatre that way. But I never felt I had anywhere near skill to do that. So, but it changed my mindset in that, right, okay, new batters in, right, I'm going to bring up mid on and mid off, and I'm going to bring up deep cover, or I might bring up a sweep man. I'm going to say to the batter, right, okay, if you want to hit me, you've got to go and do it. And I think that obviously the game's evolved, in the last period of time, but I still think there's an element of that. I think deep down, if you ask a lot of batters when they first come in, they potentially don't want to take on a shot over long on in a 50 over game. They don't want to, but I think as spinners, we can sometimes, it's easy just to keep him back, and just hold him up. But actually, that might be a way of, creating a wicket-taking opportunity, or bringing up your sweep man, or just having a few more, being a bit braver and having a few more extra players, fielders in the ring can be a way of taking wickets.
Yeah, definitely. And I think on that field stuff, I've got a bit of a theory, and this doesn't apply to the very best batters because they just do what they want basically. But I always think sometimes if I bowl a more attacking field, the batter almost shows you more respect and plays with less freedom. Whereas when you might have the two straightman batter, they just come in and knock their singles and just looks easy. Whereas if you have them up, I think batters are more likely to go in their shell and stuff.
Yeah, because if they bat you, you've kind of made their mind up for them.
Mm.
And I think, I think it's but I mean, that was the one thing from, again, it was a long time ago, but from Saki, is all of a sudden when the field changed, people would play. All of a sudden you're walking in and you've got a slip in there and you've got a short leg. All of a sudden this is hang on, this isn't a normal, 50 over game. So it's finding ways, because people, I think people now can play the attacking shots, but most people need balls to get in, and it's making it as hard as possible for batters to get in. Once they get in, then then you probably do need fielders back. But once, even if it's just for a few balls every, early in a T20, why not? Why not? See where the batter's at, because actually you don't know whether he's feeling really confident. He's not. Sometimes they just want a bit of time. You don't know where the batter's at. He might be struggling for a bit of form, and he's thinking, if I can just face, 5, 6, 7 balls, hit the sweep as hard, and then go, and actually stop them doing that, and they have to rethink their plan.
Definitely, I think especially in T20, you can only do it for 1 or 2 balls at the start, but it can still make such a difference, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. If you think of it as 120 balls, and if you can do that with a couple of batters, that potentially 4 balls of the game. And I know it's a small thing, but it can have a big effect, and also you might create a wicket as well.
Definitely, I think that's massive. You said reading batters was a bit of a strength of yours. What do you think that, because you had kind of that batter's mindset, that was easier, and what kind of things would you look for?
Yeah, I mean, I used to always see. Yeah, I think I couldn't necessarily pinpoint what they did that it was. You just get a sense of a batter that they might be getting twitchy, so then you can get under their bat, or you get the sense that they are coming in looking to hit singles. So it's a little I think the best in the world don't give you many clues in terms of their body language, but I think a lot of the time they not necessarily, when people are a little bit out of form or not as confident, they do give you a lot of clues of how they're thinking and what they're doing. So I mean, simple things of, people, people give their clues away. So look, when someone's looking for a reverse sweep, I think you have some people who are very obvious at what they do. Some people are trying to look everywhere but, behind square on the offside. But by that they're giving the clues away, because and I think if you really do spend a bit of time just watching them, you don't have to spend walk backwards or anything like that. You do pick up a lot of clues of how batters are feeling and what they're kind of thinking as well. So I used to also love rushing people.
Yeah,
I think I think it's really, especially when they are nervous, because I think that's a big thing in in T20 cricket who's running the pace of the over, and especially when you're bowling spin, seems different. But when you're bowling spin, is the batter running the pace of the over, or is the bowler? And I think that makes a massive difference of who's in control of the over, because the bowler's running it, then usually the batter's going at the bowler's pace, and then and vice versa. So I think if you can early on get control of even if you get hit for a four or a boundary, can you bowl at your pace and go through your kind of processes and not be distracted by the batter? I think it's a crucial thing, and it's something we go, oh yeah, we definitely do it at a match. But actually, when when someone has got you a couple of first balls over, can you still keep to your kind of method?
Yeah, that's interesting that running the pace over. Like, was your theory that if you rush someone, because they never so much time to think, they kind of just freeze, and their instinct would be like, oh, I'm not just going to get out this ball, rather than actually playing a big shot.
I think so. I think you're either rushing them, or some people are very good at long pauses in between balls. Really, actually, sometimes really get the batter thinking. That was never my kind of instinct, but you see it now in T20. You see people, having to wait for the bowler, and we're only talking a few seconds, but it feels like sometimes the batter, if you're struggling and scrambling around a bit, it can feel like a lifetime, and all you want to do is face the ball. So I think that's something that definitely a lot of people maybe neglect, and I think it's an important part of the game.
Definitely. I think I'm much more probably the opposite to what you were. Like, I'd say that I'm very set in my routine, and probably try and maybe like you said, get the batter thinking by pausing a bit. But I think maybe mixing it up might be a good option going forward, because I like that idea of like, right, who's running the pace of the over, who's in control. Yeah,
I think, but also it's you want to give yourself enough time, like you say, to do what you do. But it's just sometimes if you can, as long as it doesn't affect you, because ultimately you've got to deliver your skill, or anyone, a bowler's got to deliver his skill. But you can adapt yourself if or anyone can adapt themselves to make it hard for the batter.
Definitely. I think as well that, like you said about the batters, trying not to look behind square on the offside when they're going to reverse. Like, I always think that's so interesting, like trying to see where the batter's looking. And like, I reckon most I've played against, they're just like, and again, there's a lot of good batters out there, so this isn't me going at all batters, but I just think batters are pretty dumb. Like, they tend to like look where they're going to play. Like, amount of times someone will just check what the field is and then do it next ball. Is like, I think it's rogue, like how often that happens.
Yeah, I think so. And then you get some people who double bluff, but they look it's like they look so guilty doing it. So it's I think if you just spend a bit of time watching someone, you quickly work out what they're trying to do. So, and it gives you a few clues, doesn't it? So
I guess that's like another level to analysis. Like, if it's different to knowing if someone's going to revert, like if someone reverse sweeps, if you can actually tell what their cue is, that would be handy information to have.
Absolutely.
You're talking about like your mindset was more about like stop people scoring. I think that's actually quite a good one, especially in white ball cricket, because say if you listen to Shane Warne, he's like, oh, you've got to know how you're getting the batter out. But if you are squeezing them like more times than not, they're probably gonna end up throwing a wicket away, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's a way of getting someone out, isn't it? To build pressure on them by stopping them hitting boundaries and making it as difficult as possible for them. I think there's definitely I think that's a way of getting people out. It's you also, I mean, I'd love to have been able to have the skill to be able to go, right, okay, well, I'm gonna put a slip in for this new batter. I'm gonna put a slip in for a few balls and back myself to spin it past the outside edge and get it to slip. But that was never something, it's never something that I was able to do. So you then have to adapt with what you've got, doesn't it? And it's, of course, it would be lovely to, have the perfect shape and spin the ball hard and things like that. But that certainly wasn't, something I tried to do, but it wasn't naturally a natural thing for me. So it's about then adapting and finding, what can work for you, I think.
Definitely. Something else you touched on there was like changing pace was really important for you. I'm like always watching you bowl, like, I don't know if, it's probably like a physical thing, was like you always had the ability to like go up the gears and bowl like really quick. Do you reckon that stemmed from like bowling a lot of seam and your body almost being like used to doing it quicker kind of thing and being stronger?
Yeah, I think because everything about my spin bowl, because I always bowled seam, I think everything always about, for me as a spinner, was to slow things down, because I always knew that I could go, I could bowl my fast ball, and how, and that was, and in T20 cricket it worked quite nicely because I could bowl, my stock delivery was still quite fast, but then my quicker ball was a lot faster. So there was that kind of big variation in paces, which I think is important. I naturally found it a lot harder to bowl to go down in terms of pace. So I think probably my slowest pace was around kind of 52, 53, maybe 54, and then I'd be more around kind of 56, 57, 58, and then my quicker ball would, could get up to over 70 mile an hour. So that was a decent pace range, which helped. It definitely it helped through, through bowling seam, and I injured my bicep second to last year before I retired, and I couldn't get the same zip out of my quicker ball, and it really hurt me because I didn't have that pace range. I didn't have that kind of quicker ball to get me out of trouble. And everyone has a different way of doing it. Some people are very good at, delivering a wide Yorker, or, really taking pace off, or bowling a slow, a real slow wide one. It's difficult to hit. You have, or bowling a really good hit ball. My ball of getting people off strike or kind of mainly off strike was to bowl it quicker, and that change of pace could surprise people. The one thing also I had to always remember was at the start of my over, I had to start at my slower pace ranges, because I knew I was always going to get quicker through the over. If I started quick, it was always a lot more difficult for me to go, I'm going to take pace off now. It wasn't, I think, which is, I think it's normal for most spinners, but mentality-wise for me, that I think I still had that sense. Whenever I sensed danger, I went quicker. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm exactly.
I was never broke. Yeah, so it's trying. I don't know how you do it. I don't know if you how you set up your over and anything like that, or you have that, or it's just. Well, and it also depends on what batters. If you're swapping batters and you've got one batter in, and you've got one batter who's just walked in, then you bowl. I suppose you bowl different paces to them, don't you?
Yeah, I guess so. I think that starting your over slow is something I haven't really thought of before, but it's true. Like when you try and bowl on quicker, like I do think it's hard to go back. And I think, I don't know if it's different for like a wrist spinner compared to finger spinner, but I feel like naturally my pace will vary quite a bit. Like even if I'm trying to bowl exactly the same pace, but it's I think something I want to improve on is being able to change my pace more. I think that's one of my big work on this winter is like, right, can I bowl on really slow? Like, I think my stop ball's about 52. I think it's probably the same as your slower one, really. But I think that's probably actually on the quicker side for a leggy. But I think, like you said, it's more the more range you can have, the more likely you are, I guess, to deceive the batter.
Yeah. It does. I think it does make a difference.
Yeah, definitely. And so you're saying like in general, like if you think someone's coming at you, just go quicker.
Yeah, that was always my way out, I think. And it wasn't, sometimes I would, take a chance, but I always used to go, right, I'm going to go quicker, and I might go under them, or I might go into their kind of hip kind of area. But I think a ball, you see a ball a hell of a lot now. Just seeing, a lot last year in the Big Bash was kind of slow and wide. Can you take, and I think as a spinner, it's actually, and then how hard that is. If you get it right and you put it in the right spot, then all really a batter can do is hit it out to your offside sweeper. But I think we're so programmed. When I played, I was programmed to keep the stumps in play. That was always my, and actually sometimes if you get it wrong there, you're really getting someone's hitting arc. So actually being brave to go slow and wide, and and then having the smartness to make sure you get your fielders where you want them. So if you are going slow and wide, you can, if you've got two backward points, you can probably get them a lot squarer, and you can then potentially know where you're getting out to your deep cover, and move your extra cover around. And you can do this subtly as well. And like you're saying, is that batters don't always know what you're doing. They might have slight idea, but it's things like that. And then because that's something if I ever talk to young spinners, that's what I talk to them about. Is actually in white ball cricket how important it is to understand the real fine detail of your fielders. You can put in your
stick them in the fielding position, but you can quick but actually if you really understand where you get hit for runs, then I think then you're really gonna you can save 4 or 5 runs a game. So I think of myself, I used to be quick, and straight. So it was so important. I literally had my 45 man really fine.
Yeah.
Because I never want to get beaten there. So.
Yeah, I think like playing a lot with Jeets at Warwickshire as well. That was his big thing. Was like if you're fielding at a short third or 45, like just don't get beat on the inside because he knows he bowls like quick pace. And I agree. Like I think that's such an important thing, knowing like exactly where you want fielders. Like I think like whenever I come on, that's probably always spend like an extra 30 seconds just moving people like a couple of paces here or there because that can make the big difference.
Yeah, and I don't know how you found it. I used to find that people sometimes get irritated.
Oh, definitely.
And they would go, and I'd tell 45.
Like, yeah. But it's not like you just know where you want them.
Yeah, it's important. It saves runs because I think at 45, sometimes you used to literally have him nearly behind the keeper.
Yeah.
But it's like, why have got? Because I know that, like you're saying, if you get beat on the inside, that's 4. If it goes on the outside, I've got more protection in it. It doesn't go there. So, but. Yeah, it's so important to have that little attention to detail.
Yeah, I'm the same with my extra cover mid wicket. I like having them really straight, just because my theory is like it's harder for batters to play square, which is what I probably want them to do. So, just again, a really small thing, but it can make a big difference.
Absolutely. It's a dot ball, isn't it? Or and that can then put more pressure on the batter and might lead to a wicket.
Yeah. That's interesting about keeping the stumps in play. Like I think I was massively programmed to do that, and it was only this year I started changing it a little bit and like 1 or 2 and over, or if you think someone's coming real hard, like just hanging it at wide line and stuff. And it's something you got to practice, but I think it is a good skill to have, especially in T20. Really.
Yeah, it's also, I don't know how you find it, but I imagine you have to be quite brave to do it because it can fit. It feels like the consequence if you get it wrong looks like. I've bowled a short and wide one. Like you're saying, we're programmed from a young age not to bowl short and wide, but it's the game's moving on. So
yeah, I know what you mean. I think I know exactly what you mean. Like you don't want no spinner ever wants to look bad, but I think probably like if you speak about it and have like the right conversations, I guess with like captain or coach, ever like right, this is what I'm thinking to this batter. Then I think it's a lot easier to do it when everyone knows what your plan is. And like for me as well, like. One of the big bits analysis I'll do if I'm thinking of doing that is right. Are they good over extra? Because if they're good over extra, then I'll just have deep extra cover and cover in the ring because that's probably the batter's best boundary option. But yeah, I think it is. I think it's a really effective tactic.
Absolutely.
So I spoke a little bit about playing with Mushtaq Ahmed and to claim Mushtaq, like just focusing on Mushtaq Ahmed in particular. Someone who I used to watch loads when I was younger. Like, what was it like playing with him? What made him so good?
Obviously, like skill level, he's brilliant. Bowled at a good pace. I think he obviously had a slight, a unique action for a spinner. An excellent googly. But the one thing, he was outstanding skill-wise. But the one thing that really stood out was his mentality and mindset, and how he used to talk about visualising how he's going to get wickets, really in his head, and kind of, really, struck home with me, and that type of thing of how he sees, he sees a picture of how he's going to get people out, and and then he would deliver it. And I think, and again, a bit like I said about Sackler, Mushy, would start with a deep cover, and he could, and then he'd bowl bowl real loose and a long hop kind of thing. Get whacked, and where other people go, oh, I need him out there for a few more balls. Mushy's mentality is like, no, bring him up. Right, okay, I've had my loosener. Right, let's get another, another man, and and also that kind of always wanting the ball, and never never shying away from a challenge. I think the one thing that also struck about Mushy is that whatever he did, he thought he was the best at. He was like, he literally, he'd go on a running race with someone, and he would say, oh, I'm going to win. Yeah, and I'm going to win. It was like, it was a bit childish in some sense, but so like contagious, that kind of energy of like, I'm going to win. No, we're going to do this. Right, we're going to play golf. You know, Mushy would probably never play golf, only a few times, and he'd say he's going to beat someone who plays 3 times a week. You know, but that kind of, and it was a kind of jovial kind of, but yeah, there was something about it. You know, he's like, you know, he's just believe it. You know, just believe that, you know, how good he was, and you know what he could do. Even, you know, with fielding, about running people out from the boundary, and you know, he did some brilliant stuff. You know, apart from his bowling, but also, and he gave so much energy. I know personally gave so much energy to me in helping me get better as a cricketer, but also to everyone in the change room. Just kind of always had time for people, you know, always thinking of, you know, always thinking of how he can help people. You know, he's a very smart man, very kind of talk about emotional intelligence. He's so high emotional intelligence and understanding what others might be thinking. And I think, you know, so yes, he picked up unbelievable amount of wickets for Sussex, but also, you know, the way he was with people, you know, he was, you know, a real special guy to have in the dressing room.
Definitely. Class act. So you went on to captain Sussex. Like, what do you think for captains in general, and I guess for you as well, like, you know, what's key to captaining spinners? Or I guess from you, like, when you're just playing as well, like, you know, what were the best captains you had? Like, you know, what were some of the qualities they did to help manage you and other spinners?
I think the most important thing that I felt, you always feel as a player with you know, anything, but I think also probably more for spinners, because it is you know, especially in England in certain conditions, is giving them belief, and giving them, and also I think it's really important to have an understanding of the kind of role you want them to play, and you know, and actually, you know, and I think that's. And that comes, and then that gives them belief. But I think it's really important that they the spinner trusts that the captain believes in them. I think that's, and how you do that is well, the language you use is the most important thing. So making sure that, you know, and then you back up actions. So if you're saying, I really value what you do, you know, you actually entrust a spinner to bowl a certain over, you know, or come on early and set a field that kind of gives them, you know, that there's a real element of trust there. That's how I think you do it. And also in another sense that you know, if there's a young spinner, you don't necessarily expect them and have the same expectation for them as you would an older spinner, and understand, like the leg spinner, you know, I feel that leg spinner, they need a bit more protection. You know, they do. That's something you have to give them. So don't expect them to do a different role as if you had a, you know, finger spinner in your team. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a harder skill. So understand those types of things, and you know, and make sure that you know, that don't get frustrated. I think it's a real art to captain spin, and not to kind of always, especially in England early season, not to always go back to seam. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, who have you found as captain spin well?
I think the best
captain.
Yeah, I think like you said, like it's ones who kind of not just like say they back you, because I think that's the easy thing to do. It's like you say, doing those the actions that actually suggest they're backing you. So, you know, I was actually going to ask you later on about that World T20 and like whether having such a consistent side, and like, you know, I guess you knew, right, the power play's done, I'm probably going to bowl my 4 overs from now kind of thing. And for me, like that's a big thing, is like knowing what your role is and then just knowing you're going to do it. Like almost Cap doesn't even tell you you're going to bowl, like, you know, right, power play's done, I'm on now, that kind of thing. Or in red ball cricket, you know roughly when you're going to bowl, what job you're going to do. Like, so I think, you know, basically all the stuff you said. But I think as well, like it's probably same as Mushy with the emotional intelligence. It's just like, you know, knowing the captain's thinking about you, or, you know, just picking up the phone when doesn't have to speak to you, those kind of things. Like, I think are things personally I as a player have like really valued.
Yeah, I definitely think that they're things that, you know, I think once you, I even like sending I think sometimes sending articles or sending video footage of something that maybe relates to a player, I think it's really important to let them know, because you do care, because you're looking at those kind of stuff, but also letting the player know that. I was just thinking then of an instance where, like from that T20 World Cup, I remember we played a group game against Pakistan. It was early on the tournament, and my first over had gone for, I think, 12, and Paul Collin had brought me off. And I was like, and I remember going out to deep square leg. I remember having that moment where I was thinking, oh God, I might, I was catastrophizing a little bit. Right, okay, well, I might not come. If I don't come back on, I'm going to play the next game, because it was still kind of early into teen, having that little thing, and I kind of, right, okay, just said, right, if I'm going to come back on, I'm going to, do what I do and, learn from the mistakes of the first over. And I was like, right, okay, but you don't know whether you're going to get the opportunity. And then we got a wicket, and Collie straight away looked over to me and go, right, you're back on. And how big a confidence that gave me, and then I think the next 3 overs, maybe people go, oh, maybe in coincidence or whatever. I think the next 3 overs, 2 for 7, but it was like, there was a little bit of me going, right, no, this is what, I didn't deliver what I can do, but I've got to go back to what my process is and deliver it. But also him then going, right, okay, we've got an opportunity to get him back into the game, because we value what he does, and and then going for it, instead of going, we just keep going with what's happening. And I thought, and that gave me so much confidence that a guy can go, actually, we really appreciate what you do, and and actually, it wasn't a bad over, but it was just a bad over. Instead of thinking, oh no, you can't trust him again, and that, it comes both ways, isn't it? Because actually, you've got to earn the trust, but also there's an element that has to be, you have to be. You have to believe in people and give them that kind of confidence that you do to kind of, for them to give the trust back as well.
Yeah, it's hard, right? That, like you said, that actually having the confidence in your spinner, if you're a captain, I think, you use the example of early season England, it's hard to bowl a lot of spin. It might be that it seems the most effective thing, but if you're thinking long term, maybe, give the spinner a couple of overs, just so you build his confidence. So for when later in the season you get on a rugger, he's got those overs, you know what I mean? I think it's a very hard thing to do, but maybe just looking at the bigger picture, that type of thing might be important.
Yeah, I think, and also it's like that kind of understanding the role is key, isn't it? Understanding what the, actually, someone, you might have a spinner who's okay against the top order, but he's brilliant at knocking over the lower order. So what you don't want to do necessarily, you've got to, so he understands the role, he understands his strengths, and the captain explains that to a bowler and goes, actually, you know what, you're really good at, knocking over the lower order, and actually, not that we don't want to use you then, but we don't want to, we want to make sure you're not tired and you are ready to go at that point. And then just explaining, I think that's the thing, it comes back down to communication, doesn't it? This is where we value, this is your strength, we want to use you here. Actually, the seamers, the ball might be a little bit older when the lower order comes on, the seamers aren't going to be as effective. We want to keep them going now, but once that kind of 9, 10, 11 come on, that's where we really feel that you can have an impact. So a little bit of communication, I think, actually not a little bit, a lot of communication can go a long way.
Yeah, I think speaking to the lads here, when Yorkshire were really successful in the championship, Adil Rashid's a massive player for the club, and I think that was basically his role, was he wouldn't bowl too much at top 6, 7, but Tail comes in, he just gets chucked the ball. So I think actually thinking about things a bit more deep like that can really make a big difference.
Absolutely, I think so, and and it can be, it can even be, it might be, I don't know, first innings it's not much there for the spinner, but actually second innings they really come into the game. But again, if you're always communicating that back, then the spinner's not just potentially standing at mid-on or square leg or fine leg and thinking, I just want to bowl, I'm not getting that opportunity. They actually know what the plan is. And sometimes things don't go to plan, but if you've got a general framework of how you're looking to go about it, then it gives everyone an understanding of what when they're going to be needed.
Definitely. So speaking a little bit about the T20 World Cup, well, first of all, what was it like to be involved in that whole tournament, but also as a spinner, what kind of things made you successful in that tournament, and what things maybe you learned as it went on?
Yeah, I mean, I think first question, and to be involved in it was amazing. I played a little bit for England before then, done okay, but hadn't played for 3 years. And then I had a good season for Sussex in T20 cricket in 2009. And then we went to the Champions League and played out there. And again, bowled well in the game out, or a couple of games out there. So I had a kind of confidence that, yeah, I had a confidence in a kind of a mind that I thought, I heard a little bit of a murmurs that I might have an opportunity. And it was a bit of, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I'm going to go and show people, I'm going to go and do this, I'm going to do that. But, I want to kind of, in my mind, I was thinking, I want to go and see where I'm at as a cricketer, see where, what I'm doing now in domestic cricket, is that something that can be effective in kind of international cricket? And I had a real kind of mindset where I was always looking to kind of see where I was at and learn. And I really enjoyed that World Cup for that mindset. And also, it was a great team to be involved with, because again, it comes back to that word belief. And I think we quickly realised, actually, you know what, we didn't have sometimes, some the household names that you kind of, you think of at the time. Kind of players like myself, and even someone like Craig Keysford at the time was not very well. No, he hadn't played a lot of international cricket. Michael Lumb hadn't played a lot of international cricket. There was a lot of players who were kind of, who were good T20 cricketers, but hadn't really been recognised. But I think quickly in the squad, we realised and looked around after the warm-up games and in practice, actually, we had all bases covered. If people delivered, we had a good chance of, of going a long way in the competition. And that kind of happened after we got past the first 2 games, where we snuck through to the Super 4s or 8s. Yeah. All of a sudden we got back and played, playing against, we were comprehensively beating Pakistan, who had won it. South Africa were one of the favourites. We beat them quite easily. New Zealand were a good team. We beat them. And all of a sudden you get into the semi-final and you're playing Sri Lanka, who are, always in semi-finals, it felt at the time. You have a real confidence. And, there was a kind of, that's what I think Paul Collingwood brought to the team. And, a lot of the other senior guys, there was a real kind of belief in and real clearness of what people could do. So that then created a real calmness, and everyone was quite relaxed. Everyone was like, well, it was kind of like, well, he bowls in this stage of the game, and he'll do this and he'll do that. If he doesn't do that, then someone else will take it, and someone will score the runs. And if he doesn't, then KP was unbelievable, and then Owen Morgan had a great tournament. Then Luke Wright comes in and scores a few runs, or Paul Collingwood comes in, and do you know what I mean? It was like everyone kind of was really clear in their roles, and then if that didn't happen, someone else would step up. But Kevin Peterson was absolutely brilliant in terms of that. The main thing, second question, the main thing I learned from that tournament, I kind of stuck to what I did. Like I've said all the way along, I kind of bowled it reasonably quickly into the pitch, tried to get something out of it, a bit of changes of pace, and worked it out. But the big thing I learned that tournament was bowling with kind of Swanee. And I remember the first few games we played at Barbados, and the wind was kind of blowing into my face, and I totally understood that he was the kind of bowler who, who it was a breeze. The breeze was coming down, so he would get a lovely breeze with his. He'd be with the wind, but getting a breeze where he's kind of taking it away from the batter to bring it back in, spin it back in. And I just, it made perfect sense for me to bowl into the wind, because that's all what I'd done with Sussex. And then to a short edge, and we played at St Lucia, and there was a short edge, one side, real short edge, like for an international game. And I just assumed that I would bowl the end to protect the short edge. Yeah. And Swanee was like, no, I bowled this end. I was like, oh, right. I was thinking off spinner to the short edge. It doesn't make sense. But he was like, no, I need the breeze. That's my best way of getting wickets. So he's like, he wasn't even worried. Well, he wasn't really that worried about the short edge. He's more about, I need the breeze because that's my best chance of getting wickets. So that's when, we're talking about kind of, the best and understanding how you're going to take wickets. That would be something that really struck home for me. I was like, blooming out of the sky. It felt like a 55-metre boundary, but he was like, no, I'm bowling that in because I've got the breeze. And that's when I think you've got a world-class performer, because they're happy to go, you know what, they can get me. They might get me to a short boundary for a couple of sixes, but actually, my best chance is to get them out is to have that breeze to take it away, to spin it back in. So that was a real learning for me. I was like, oh, blooming hell. That that's good quality thinking. And again, a bit like I said about Mushy. Mushy has had that kind of mentality as well.
Yeah, that's class. I think that's a big thing. I think it's quite easy, especially in white ball cricket. It's easy for spinners to bowl the end that's easy for them to bowl at. Do you know what I mean? So for me, to a right-hander, not having a short edge on, or say to a left-hander, not having a short edge on a certain side, but like you said, if it's your best chance of getting poles, then that's probably a really effective mindset to have. And I think as well, like short boundaries always creates opportunities, because people just not only creates opportunities for wickets because people get obsessed with it, but also like you can actually dot people up because they're so obsessed with it, they might miss out on other balls. You know what I mean? So it's, and I'm sure it's a thing in world professional cricket, but especially in county cricket, because we play so much, normally play so much. You get so many short boundaries that it's almost like you play more times than not on a short boundary compared to like in the middle. So it's a really important thing just to get your head around getting used to doing that job.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there. You're like, it's about how you frame it in your head. Do you frame it as like, oh no, the short edge, oh no, the bat's taking at me, or you think actually it gives me a hell of a clue of where he's probably going to look to try and get me. Because I think in most meetings you'll have as a batting group, the one thing they say is don't become obsessed with the short edge.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, but unfortunately, not unfortunately, but batters do. Batters do become obsessed with the short edge because it's the easiest way to hit a six, isn't it? But actually, if you know if someone's going to try and hit you, it makes it a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, I think that's a really talking about hitting the wide line earlier. That's probably when it's most important, is if you have a short boundary on the leg side, because you can just kind of hang it out there. But I remember like one thing that Jim Trout used to say at Warwickshire, which I think is so true, is like when you, and again, I guess it's more for batters than spinners, but like the amount of times there's like a six on the short boundary that is like an obscenely big six because like they haven't tried to absolutely moose it. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
So it's like it's rare that obviously happens, but it's rare that it's just clothed over. It always seems to be like absolutely monster because batters aren't trying to overhit or anything.
Absolutely, you see that, absolutely. Short edges, you don't, very rarely do people. If you get it wrong, you get it wrong, don't you? And actually, I think I can't remember who it was, but actually sometimes when there's a long edge, when people cloth it, it never carries to the field. It always goes for one.
Yeah.
So actually, to a short edge, when they cloth it, you're probably going to get them out. So
yeah, that's true. So just last thing about T20, like I think we've spoken about a little bit, but like, what do you think makes a really successful T20 side? Like, it sounds like one thing you've really spoken about, without putting words in your mouth, is like having that like consistency in roles and clarity in roles, which I think is like the most important ingredient, especially in T20 for a successful team. Like, is that something you think now and you're still kind of banging the drum with when you're coaching?
Yeah, I think it is definitely about having role clarity. I think it is. But I think as a cricketer, you can't just go, well, I think the game's moving on now. You can't go, well, I just bowl in this phase of the game. I think you need to know that you can bowl in all phases of the game. But you're trying to, I think it always happens that people get patterns. There's patterns of how people go about winning games of cricket. So even you just, so I don't know, like you start a tournament and then all of a sudden you get off to flyers in power plays. Sometimes you plan for it, and sometimes conditions you might plan for it, and then sometimes conditions allow you to do it. And then all of a sudden, then it's like that's how they go and play. It's like, right, we just take on power plays.
Yeah.
Or or actually become a really good team at the death just by certain things. And it's the same with bowling spin. You might say, oh, we're gonna give start with spin, and you get a few wickets early, and then all of a sudden you start bowling a hell of a lot more spin in a power play, and all of a sudden you have a pattern of playing. And I think that's something you see with the teams that are being very successful. There's a pattern of how they go about it, whether that bat or ball. And I think that definitely helps. And then you see the same in the field, just because people know how the bowlers are going to bowl. All of a sudden, I think of like as a spinner, if you don't bowl a mid wicket and you bowl a deep mid wicket, if you keep getting the same guy out there, he understands what batters try to do and it's these little things like we spoke about, actually being really precise on where you put your fielders. All of a sudden, without realising it, you're probably saving 10 runs a game because you're putting the fielders in the right spots. They know They have an understanding of how people how people bowl, where they're going to get hit. Whether they need to sit back a little bit or they're coming in being really tight on the one. And I know there's a framework within teams and things like that how you go about it, but I think individually you have to take responsibility for that as a fielder. Actually going, right, I'm at backward point here, unless the bowler tells me not, I'm going to be really tight on one with this guy because I know he's going to try and knock it in there and get one. So I'm going to be real tight. I'm going to take that responsibility on myself, or I know this guy is going to look to reverse sweep the spinner. I'm not going to wait for the bowler to tell me. I'm going to sit back and try and get the catch. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's when you see a team playing. That's when you see a team playing really well, and they really understand the different roles and for them, but also what their teammates are doing. And there's that kind of, they're kind of not second guessing, but they understand what might happen in certain situations. And that does come from role clarity. And I also think you got, like we spoke about the short boundary, you've got to be prepared. You want, as a captain, if there's a difficult over to bowl, you quickly realise when you see a lot of backs and not many people want it. Actually when a team's going well, you've got a lot of people going, I can take this over, I'll take this over. And this is my plan. This is what I'm going to do. And sometimes the captain may not agree with it, but I tell you what, there aren't many captains who don't like a bowler coming up to them and saying, this is what I'm going to do and this is why I'm going to do it. And I think if you've got players doing that, then it gives you a best chance. Because then if they can verbalise what they're going to do, they have a lot more belief in it and they're more likely to be able to deliver it.
Definitely, completely agree with all of that. So when towards the end of your career and now when you finished, like you moved on to studying like first an undergrad psychology degree and then now doing a master's in it, has this helped your coaching a lot? And knowing what you do now, would you have gone about things different as a spinner?
I think, firstly, I think, has it helped my coach? I think it has. I probably look at things a little bit differently in terms of, I don't always necessarily think of technique. I try and think about how people go about thinking, ways of thinking about situations, and they're more around their mindset and how they think about the game. And I think that's definitely helped in that sense. Because I think it's I don't know if I was as a player, but sometimes it's very easy to get caught up in technique, and and it's actually sometimes it can be a little bit of a safety blanket. If I get my technique right, I'll be all right. But actually, you know what? If your technique's probably going to break down if you haven't practiced. If you've practiced just on technique and you haven't put any kind of feeling or emotion in your practice, that kind of feeling you get in a match, those kind of nerves and that uncomfortableness, then you're not practicing the full skill set, because actually you want to practice and feel slightly uncomfortable in your practice and test that technique. So then when you get in matches, that gap isn't so big. And I think that's something that I really, I kind of believe quite a lot about. I think it would hugely help my playing if I'd have known what I know now. I think just being able to understand how you think and how the brain works, I think that's huge. And I think it's not complicated. I think we're certainly not complicated for me, because I'm not bright enough to get it that complicated. But I think understanding how your brain goes in the simplest form, and how you can do certain little things when you're feeling the pinch in the middle that can actually help you. And I think it's then trying to and then you're trying to relay them to players without it kind of being very subtly as well, because you don't necessarily want them. Ultimately, most people will say when they're playing at their best, they're not thinking about a huge amount, and it's just having an understanding what helps you get to your best, and how you think.
Definitely, like one thing you spoke about earlier was from that World Cup was that catastrophizing, and I think all cricketers and spinners can probably relate to that. Like if you have a bad over or whatever, you think, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. So I guess it's interesting to hear hear those kind of things from you and how you go about it differently. Yeah,
I think it's really. I think you do. You go, and you start kind of looking. You start thinking about what happened, and you start thinking. Probably, you can get spiraling out of control and think about, your value and things like that. All of a sudden, in this short, your brain's kind of out of control. The only way you get yourself out of that is to have an action plan about what you're going to do. Right, what am I going to do? If I come on next over, what am I going to do? and that's how you focus yourself, trying to take yourself away from your thoughts and actually into what you're going to do, what you're going to do, and how you're going to do it. And I think that's a massively important thing to do. You can't you can't solve a game of cricket or bowl well in your head. You've got to be actually right. Okay, this is going on in my head, but what do I need to do right now to get myself back into this game? And I think if you can have that kind of mentality all the time, and go, yep, you know what, that didn't go how I wanted, but what can I learn from it, and what can I take into my next over or my next game?
So, like when you coach players, like people talk a lot about having a process, and it's something I think's been really important for me. Like, is that something you encourage players to have a process that they follow? So, if things aren't going to plan or they come under pressure, like it's something they can go back to.
Yeah, I do. I think it is. And I think sometimes, I won't go too much into it, but batting, like you talk about, and bowlers have it, saying bowling routines, and you go through little idiosyncrasies. And I think they are important, but I also think actually what you think about and what you're really, and being really clear, coming back to action, if that makes sense. So coming back in your head, right, as a batter, I've played and missed at that one, right, okay, this is what I'm going to kind of evaluate it, but next ball I'm going to come back to and go, right, what am I going to do? And that's the same bowling, isn't it? Like, right, okay, I've just been hit for 4, probably too much width, right, next ball I'm going to go, quick pace into kind of middle leg and try and spin it hard, and just real simple things. And I think it's so easy to say, like we're talking now, but actually when you're under pressure, can you keep going back to that point? And then that comes back to your practice. Can you get those kind of feelings where it isn't always feel really nice in practice, but you can always come back to what you need to do in the next moment?
Definitely. So, like, obviously, it's probably $1 million question, but like, how do you practice those situations? What can you do to practice under pressure?
It changes for different players. I think always having a consequence, and the consequences can mean so many different things, because ultimately people don't like to be, well, as humans, we don't like to be judged, do we, by others? And that's where it comes, isn't it? So actually when you haven't bowled well, a lot of it comes back to what my teammates thinking, people getting on the back in the crowd and things like that. So actually, whenever you can kind of repeat that kind of feeling of that uncomfortableness of being judged in practice, however that is, then I think that's how you can then take that into your matches, and that will kind of, it's trying to create that kind of uncomfortableness. That's when people really perform at their best, is when you are slightly uncomfortable, but you always come back. You're always comfortable to know you come back to your process, if that makes sense. You have to be able to get uncomfortable in practice, so then you can practice, keep coming back to your process.
Yeah.
So keeping it logical.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So thanks, Yard. It's been top draw, mate. So many brilliant bits of insight. So just to finish off, I've asked all my guests for one bit of on-field and one bit of off-field advice for young spinners. So what would yours be?
On the field, I would always talk about, and I think a real thing that's kind of maybe not thought about, is how you carry yourself on the field. As a spinner, if you get hit for a 4, how much does your body language change when you're on top of a batter? Does your body language change a huge amount? Can you keep really consistent? Can you keep really consistent about what you're doing, instead of getting really excited or getting, or being quite deflated? So that would be my thing on the pitch.
Yeah.
And then off the pitch, I think it's having that kind of mind where you're really curious to try things. You need your fundamental basics of what you're doing and knowing how you go, and then being brave enough to try new things. I think even if you've had success and you've done well, and you've wherever you are, you've had a lot of success, I think it's really important to go, yeah, I've got that base, but can I just try different things? And if it doesn't work out, then you've still got your base, if that makes sense. Yeah. But I think sometimes when we've got something working, we kind of like, oh no, that works, I don't want to try, I don't want to mess around with that, because that's okay. But actually, you've got to keep kind of adding little layers on, and that's how I think the best get to becoming the best. Yeah. From what I've seen, that's how I think.
That's such a hard balance. That I completely agree. Being curious is massive, and I think that's just reflecting on my own journey, I think that's probably been a massive reason for, me going on to play professional cricket. But it is such a balance, isn't it? Like you said, once you've had success and you've done something in a certain way, to then go and change it is really hard, because there's always that voice in the back of your mind saying, oh, but don't change it, like it's a risk because you've done this well. Do you know what I mean? Like it's such a hard balance, isn't it?
Yeah, I think as I say, I think it's not necessarily so. If you bowl in a certain way, or you play cricket in a certain way, I think that's how you go and do it. But trying a new, different thing on top of that, rather than going, oh, I don't know, I don't know, I bowl quickly, at the stumps and get it to spin a little bit, and now I'm going to bowl it really, and now I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to bowl slow. Do you know what I mean? So it's just always adding layers onto your top. So not trying to necessarily reinvent the wheel, but just keep going. Right, okay, well, I don't know, whatever it is, just add a little bit of. If you can just keep adding a little bit on every year, then you just, or even, and that's just learning, isn't it? Just trying and going, okay, well, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I can always go back to what I do. So
definitely, I think that's spot on. So thanks, Yards, for coming on. That's been top draw.
Cheers, mate.